Nothing tops off a horrible loss like technical difficulties to start the show. Hopefully, this doesn't echo on y'all's end. I think we're good over here. What a disaster of a game. What a disaster way to end the season. What a disaster way to put an end to this era as we know it. Doesn't mean that Kyle Shanahan's not going to be here. Doesn't mean that some of these players aren't going to be back. But this team, as we know it, it's over. And it ended swiftly, brutally, and I think for most, unexpectedly. We're going to talk about it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And I got my guy David with me. You guys in the chat got to let me know, is there an echo when David and I have a little back and forth? David, what's up, my man?
Hey, man. I'm happy to be here. Got another loss in the books, and time to talk ball.
Yeah, man. This is absolutely crazy. Extreme echo. Yes, sounds good. Hold on. Oh, they're saying echo. Gosh. Dang. That's frustrating. Super frustrating. I'm going to try one more thing real quick.
Okay.
Man, oh man, oh man. Okay. David, you got me?
I got you.
Oh my God, it just started working out of nowhere. Yeah, all right. Are we good on the echoes, everybody? I had a feeling that it would echo for the chat and not for us. I think we are good. Okay.
But Jesse, it's bad luck, man. It's just bad luck.
It's bad luck. It's happenstance. What are you gonna do? It's just the way that it works.
Yeah.
Speaking of bad luck, today's game brought to you by Bad Luck Incorporated, apparently. Okay. I'm sorry. And I have said not to fire Kyle Shanahan, and I'm still not there yet, believe it or not. But we got to start with what the F, Kyle. And there's about 5 what the Fs that I have from this game. Let's start with just playing Brock Purdy in this monstrosity. What do you think of that decision?
Well, we knew that going into this game that Brock wanted to play. We heard that he wanted to play. He's got the shoulder injury. He's taken painkillers. Shows a lot of his toughness and his commitment to want to be out there on the field. I get that. I think throwing him out there though, and this just in, the offensive line really did not play that badly. They were running the ball down the field. Protection actually was pretty decent in lots of situations given the conditions. But yeah, no Trent Williams. But Ben Barch and Jalen Moore played well. But putting him out there and then keeping him out there after the Buffalo Bills brought in Mitch Trubisky, I've espoused giving Kyle a lifetime contract, but there's one thing, and this is years ago I said this, one thing that I think that Kyle just doesn't do is he doesn't really care about the health of his players. He can say that he does. You can say that this is ridiculous or it's not a conspiracy theory. These players are dispensable and disposable to Kyle. Players come and players go. Kyle's the constant. And I think this is the kind of situation we're going to be talking about is whether it's Purdy, whether it was CMC, where guys are clearly not fully healthy. And we're going to get to that injury here in a little bit, but I'm losing faith in Kyle's ability to care. And I talked to a couple of guys outside behind the scenes that I think Kyle put Purdy in this situation because I'm not sure the 49ers long-term plans involve Brock. And I don't think Kyle really cares. And I think that Kyle was wanting to see, hey, are you in a situation where you're in bad weather again? And we saw one team move the ball down the field all game long, no turnovers, big plays, running the ball, passing the ball, no drops, things like that. And the other team couldn't. And I think Kyle wanted to see that one more time. And I think we got our answer. But yeah,
I, I just it was so obvious.
Hmm?
Everything that we're about to talk about tonight was so obvious to everybody but Kyle, it seems.
Yep.
It was so obvious that Brock Purdy was not going to play well tonight. He wasn't going to come out and throw the ball well, knowing that it was wet the way that it has been in the past when he's really struggled. And then you add in a potential injury that's still lingering on top of that. It's no surprise that Brock Purdy struggled tonight and was going to. It's just we all knew it was going to happen. And you said something in a text. You said, you know what, tonight was actually probably more. I think it was you said it was more tailor made for
Mhm.
Josh Dobbs
Yep.
than it was Brock Purdy. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, just what look, Brock is a plus athlete. No, I don't have to tell anybody. I'm not going to talk down to the viewership here. You guys know who Brock Purdy is. He's an athlete. He can move with his legs. But I just think that what Dobbs can do as a guy who will be more of a runner, who is, I just feel with more arm strength and in these situations where you're in those conditions, I just feel like if you're going to play him, if you're going to make him active, especially late in the game, put him in there. And I think that it was very clear early on that Brock was not content pushing the ball down the field, everything down the field. And again, conditions are what they are. We're kind of ducks. There's no zip. It's all short stuff. He wasn't trusting himself to throw in situations where there might have been something there. His shoulder clearly is bothering him, connected to the elbow. And I just feel like in this situation, I think Kyle was like saying, "Hey, one last hurrah." But at 5-7, yeah, I felt like Dobbs should have gone in when it was clear that Purdy really isn't at 100%. We know, Jesse, you and I both know 100% that he wasn't at 100%. We know what he had to do to get ready for this game, and I think that what he had to do to get ready for this game is not long term how you take care of players. It's not how you take care of your career. And wherever that catalyst is coming from is either playing off Brock's desire to be out there versus what Kyle feels that him being be a little bit more dispensable and just doesn't. I don't know, but I would have rather seen Josh Dobbs out there earlier because it just wasn't getting done. The offense. I mean, I thought both teams could run the ball. I thought a lot of that had to do with the snow too, but the Bills obviously ran the ball with more proclivity but I think the defensive line was probably at a bad advantage on both teams in those situations. But yet, I don't know. I think there are things that we can take away from this game. I'm not going to look at this as a bad weather game that says, no, there's nothing that we can extrapolate. There's nothing that we can understand. And I think the thing is there's two teams. Both teams actually had injuries, and one team averaged over 8 yards of play. The other was averaging about 5 until garbage time.
Yeah, and the comment here says both teams had to play in the weather, which of course, yes, of course. But listen, nobody that was in their sane mind going into this game thought that Josh Allen and Brock Purdy are on the same level. Okay? Like we knew what Josh Allen could do in this weather. We knew he could do these things. That shouldn't be a surprise. It also shouldn't be a surprise that Brock did what he did in this weather because we've seen him in weather that wasn't as bad play bad. Like when the ball gets wet, he struggles. That's just what it is. And that's what it's been. And we can say, hey, we only see that once a year. We only see it so often. But you're going to see it. And sometimes you see it in the worst moments. Sometimes it happens in the playoffs. And I don't know how many different ways I can show you or say you can't pay this man $60 million. But here you go. Here's another one.
So here's the thing, too. I just want to put this to bed about. So I live in cold weather. Brock played at Iowa State, where I know a couple of people said, "Oh, he played at cold weather at Iowa State." I said, yeah, and he didn't do very well in cold, wet weather at Iowa State either. And by the way, Iowa State played they just got in the Big 12 championship game. I almost went to the game, but it was so cold I didn't want to go. Down there in Iowa visiting my family. They don't play in that type of weather that often. And guess what? Neither do the Buffalo Bills. This is the first time this year that it snowed, right? This team, people act like, oh, you're in Buffalo. It must be frigid all year. It's not, right? This team hasn't practiced in snow. This team hasn't been used to those elements. In fact, the Bills lost, what was it? over the last several years, 6 captains. They've lost a lot of veterans. They've got a lot of new players, a lot of young players. A lot of these guys have never been in these conditions their whole life. This is not something that is just like in your muscle memory of exactly how to do it. It's like either you can or you can't. You either perform or you don't. You either come through in the clutch or you don't, right? So I don't think this idea that the 49ers were at some disadvantage because they were in Santa Clara. In fact, the 49ers just played a cold weather game last week. Right. So you were on the road. You were in a situation where you've been in some colder temperatures. I don't buy that for a second. I just don't.
Yeah. And it's just Josh Allen doesn't even make $60 million. All right. He doesn't make $60 million. And we're just like ready to shell this money over to Brock for what? I don't understand the obsession.
And tonight with Josh Allen, it was clear that the Bills and Joe Brady were not going to be, they weren't being super aggressive with the pass. They were very run heavy, right? And Josh Allen can, but then they picked their moments, and almost every time, and there were a couple of times where Josh Allen had a couple releases that were a little off, that they were a little bit behind because the ball's wet. But by and large, there were no big faux pas. There were no near picks, right? And then there were times where he pushed the ball down the field, and when he had to, he made it happen. He made it happen with his legs. He made it happen with his arm. He made it happen with his decision making. Even the touchdown where he throws it and he's in position to mop up the mess. That's him and Amari Cooper working together. It's not like they practiced it, but he's like, hey, I'm going to be around the ball. Like, that's just like, those are the type of things that separate an MVP caliber player and a Jag. Right. And I think that when you're talking about $60 million, and I'm not talking about Trevor Lawrence, the Jag, I'm talking about just another guy. And I love Brock. I like Brock a lot. I'm trying to be realistic. And I think there's some fans here, whether it's on Twitter, or whether it's through here, and you might think that Jesse and I, or whoever might be, we're associated with, like we're some hive mind or whatever. We disagree all the time, Jesse and I. The bottom line is this. This game really shows you the kryptonite is real for Brock. Okay, you can say it was his injury, what have you, what not. But Josh Allen had an injury too. You know, I guess it's not his throwing shoulder, but his hand was aggravated the whole game. Didn't come out, didn't affect it. I mean, could have affected ball security, didn't. I think the conversation we're going to have tonight, we're going to keep having for the next several weeks is this man a $60 to $65 million quarterback? And the answer is a resounding no. And if you were to tell me to my face or to anybody's face that that's true, I'm sorry. Like, I respect all kinds of opinions. I don't respect that opinion. I just don't. Right? That there is no world where that makes sense. And I think as we see that this team, we talked about just at the beginning of the opening, that this is the death. Like, I think granted, the death of the 49ers party, or the death of this team, or this iteration of this team is done. It's done. And so we'll talk about the ramifications of paying him, but you can't keep the team together, and you don't want to with these old veterans around him. You're going to have to build, and it's just, there's going to be hard decisions to make. And I don't know if I have faith that the 49ers are willing to make those. I know that there's people in the building that are willing to have the conversation, but whether they're going to actually pull the trigger, rip off the Band-Aid and do it remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the 49ers have to be willing to have a down season to get back to where they want to be.
I agree.
And I'm not talking about this year. I mean another down season, because you're going to have to cut some big contracts and move on and be ready to take a back step and okay with that. And that means that if Kyle's your guy and Brock's your guy and whoever's your guy, you go to them and you tell them, don't worry about it. Your job is safe. We're taking a back step. Get rid of all the bad contracts now, and let's move forward after next year. You have to be willing to do that. But you're right. I don't know that they will be willing to do that, because that means you may not sell your season tickets. That means you may not have a full stadium. And right now, that's every owner's priority is to have that full stadium. They're hiking up ticket prices. As you know, you're a season ticket holder. You've been priced out, basically, you said, because you don't see this team turning it around anytime soon, on top of how expensive it's gotten, up 50% inflation over 2 seasons. You just can't do it anymore. It's not worth it.
And I think what people need to know, if you're not a season ticket holder, it's not a flex for me. And a lot of people think of like, oh, it's Silicon Valley, so it's all these, if you're in the lower bowl, you're just some exorbitantly wealthy person. You guys go to NFL games. Most NFL fans, I'm not talking about either meatheads or the other end of the spectrum, but like they're working people. And I'm not saying everybody's hurting or things like that, but like this idea that your fan base is made up of fans. like people that are not there just to, pinky up, right? Like sipping, like they're into it. This fan base travels. And I think what you're seeing here in this situation is that the 49ers have been putting all their eggs in this basket to keep those fans engaged, to keep those fans here. And 22 and 23 were the times. Brock gets hurt with the UCL in the NFC Championship game. And then 23, they got the healthiest team in the NFL. They have the most talented roster in the NFL. They have the best play caller, allegedly, in the NFL. And they didn't make it happen. And those were the years to do it. And so now you're in a situation where they're starting to hike up. And by the way, this is anecdotal. There's all kinds of season ticket holders in my section that have said, thanks, but no thanks. And so you're going to see, like, people are going to call it fair weather. When you have to put up $6,000 for 2 tickets in February 15th for this product, and then, and if there's, and you can't, I'm sorry, like, and so these, I'm not going to get in the math of it anymore, but this is something that the ownership has to think about. And and I think right now, there's a real possibility that this cliff is very precipitous for this team. And I don't know if ownership is going to have the patience to do that. That's what I'm really worried about, because in order to rectify this and get back to being able to compete and have a chance like you did in 22 and 23, you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, and it's going to tear some skin off. Like, you have to be willing to suffer. You have to be willing to have a little bit of pain. And I'm not talking about Chip Kelly pain. I'm not talking about Mike Tomsula pain. I'm talking about smart, judicious management of the roster, building through the draft, and thinking about who are the pieces going forward, and not being sentimental about anybody.
I just had to bring the comment up on the screen because we got just a Mordecai. Hold on, I may. Here we go.
Tanner Moore.
Any of them? Yeah. We this was Coach and I were doing a show before the season, and we came up with the tagline "Just a Mordecai" because he kept calling everybody Tanner Mordecai. Like, every white guy was Tanner Mordecai on both teams. So instead of just a guy, it's everybody's just a Mordecai. So there you go.
It's hilarious.
Let's talk about field goal kicking. Jake frickin' Booty. Again, another thing that was pretty clear, that you get bad weather. Field goal kicking is not going to be something you can rely on yet.
No.
The 49ers wanted to rely on it pretty heavily to start this game.
Yep.
What the hell, Kyle?
No, but this is what the 49ers have done all year. Their red zone efficiency has been garbage. This wasn't even in the first situation. The missing a field goal, I get it in these conditions. T-Bass came out and missed one, but they also I think it was like a 50-some yard field goal, and they're like, hey, let's see if you can make it. All I remember is this: Jake Moody was drafted in the 3rd round, and one of the selling points was he plays in the big house, he plays in the elements, he plays in, and he didn't even get it there. And by the way, the commentators were talking about this. The wind that was swirling, like, it really wasn't that windy down there on the field. You didn't see it. Ball wasn't like rolling across the snow or like off the tee or things, or, and so this idea, like, he didn't even have a leg to get it there on the 55er. He had the line. He didn't even have the distance, right? Like, and he's been hurt too, right? And so this is the 49ers. I also think that sometimes have part of the relying on the field goals, their unwillingness to push the ball downfield as much as I'd like to see them do it. And tonight wasn't going to be the game that you're going to be able to do that. But yeah, I don't know. To me, tonight, when you're in the red zone, I think field goals are off the table. When you're going up against a team like the Buffalo Bills that put up, what was it? What was the final score? Was it like 38-10? I don't even remember what the final score was.
I stopped watching it 35-10.
Yeah. So like you know they're going to put up points, and I think that this is why I'm tired of watching Kyle settle for 3. Doesn't make any sense.
Fun fact: 49ers were up 3-0 to start this game.
Boom. Love that.
After that.
Love that.
All right, let's talk about CMC. It's just been reported that Kyle Shanahan has said that it's a PCL injury, likely season-ending PCL injury. Who could have seen this one coming, right? I mean, bad weather. You got a guy who's been completely overused for about 3 weeks. Nobody's been saying that anywhere. And he starts out the game with like 9 touches in the first 12 plays and now has a season-ending injury.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on this one?
They're like, I've got so many different angles going through my brain. I'm going to roll back to the summer with the extension. I I love CMC. I'm all about, I've said this in every show. I'm pro labor. I'm pro player. I want these guys to make every dime they can, as much money that they can extract from these multi-billion-dollar organizations. You have to do it. And so I am not I'm not pocket watching or pocket booking, whatever, to CMC. But the extension that they gave to him was unnecessary, given that what they knew about his maladies and his bilateral Achilles tendonitis. And that PCL, I'm no doctor, but I also know that, you've talked about this. We talked about this behind the scenes all the time. Your Achilles, your quad, your hamstrings, your calf, like all of these things are connected, right? All of these things create tension throughout the body. All of these things create, chronic issues. And this isn't just a season-ending injury for CMC. I think, for all intents and purposes, this is a career-ending injury for CMC. I think that I'm not saying he can't come back and play, right? But the MVP caliber CMC is over. And I think that this year we knew for a fact that, CMC's dad, Ed, didn't want him to come back. Ed gave him advice not to come back, right? These players want to play, though. You got to love that. You got to love that about these guys. This is what they do. They ball, right? Kyle not only bringing him back, but then overusing him once he gets here. Everybody else is just put on the shelf. And then as soon as CMC goes down, what does Jordan Mason do? Rip off a run. What does Isaac Guerrero do? Score a touchdown, right? Off the pitch screen. It goes back to what I said at the beginning of the show, Jess. And this isn't just recency bias or I don't like to say it, but I do not believe that Kyle cares about the physical health of his players. I think he respects his players. I think he cares about them as human beings. I think, though, the physical health, he just looks at it as part of the sport. That's part of the grind. It's part of the career. And I don't think he's really worried about what happens to them afterwards in that regard. And I think in this team, it's been very clear that Kyle only uses players when he has to, that are not his top tier, top echelon guys, not his Cabo boys, right? And and until you get hurt, you don't get run. And that's true. You can say that for every player on this team, Jordan Mason, the Isaac Guerendos, your Jeff Wilsons, whatever you want to say over down the road, it's always been these guys that come up and shine because they have to play them, not because they were for Raheem Mostert. I mean, all of these guys go back to those kind of things.
To me, it's so obvious. And it's not like, we're the only ones that were saying it. Everybody in the chat was talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the only people that said otherwise are people that want to carry water for Kyle and the organization. We heard it all, man. We heard it all. Mason doesn't run through the right hole. Okay, well, he's averaging over 5 yards a carry. I don't know what you want from him. In fact, his first touch tonight, he went crazy, and I go, oh, yeah, there goes Mason running through the wrong hole again. Got to get him out of there. And then 2 plays later, CMC's hurt. It was so obvious this was going to happen. So obvious. Well, and it's what I was just to say real quick. And the thing that sucks the most about this for CMC is that he looked like a shell of himself for the first 3 games he was back. Tonight, for the first time, we kind of saw that explosion come back. Now, maybe it's because everybody was running in snow. That that's a possibility. But either way, he looked really, really good in this game. And as quickly as he came back, he was done again.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. And both teams made plays with the run game, I think, was more than they usually do, right? And I think that the lateral movement for defenders was mitigated a lot. And then that straight line speed for like those plant and run was a lot easier for the offensive player. However, you're right. And here's the thing about Jordan Mason. I talked about the stat this week. Everybody talks about, oh, he's not going to be this guy in the as a pass catcher. Through the first 5 games, everybody knew that he set the 49ers record for the first 5 starts as a Niner, but he also second to Derrick Henry on the first 5 games. He was second to Derrick Henry in 2 categories: yards after contact and yards gained over expectation. YOE. Well, they call it like completion percentage OE, CPOE for quarterbacks, right? So he was one of the most efficient running backs. Like, And actually, in those stats, his stats were so high. It was like they were like that. Henry and Mason were two of the most efficient running backs given that contact in like the history of the NFL in that 5-game span. It was insane. You can't tell me that the degree people are acting like the drop off from CMC, and I've had like these real from people I respect, but these real like mental gymnastics to try to like kind of like X and O me to death about how, well, you got to understand that he's not. I don't care. When the rubber hits the road, Jordan Mason produces. And I think that's what's bothering me more about the overuse of CMC is not as if it's got CMC and it's like Corey Sheets. It's not like CMC. It's not just like CMC and some, dad off the couch. It's CMC and the guy who's the second best in yards after contact in the entire NFL. Efficient in Kyle's offense. One cut and go. That's what's boggling my mind is that it wasn't like we've talked about how Kyle won't play players until he has to, but then he did have to play Jordan, and then Jordan showed what he could do, and then it was like back on the shelf. It's like Kyle can't even see it and go with it. That's the block. And this is where, Jesse, that people talk about firing Kyle. I'm not saying these are the things that nobody's doubting Kyle's acumen as a play caller or a play designer or a schematically, savant-ish guy, right? These are the things, though, that are bugaboos for Kyle, that aren't always bugaboos for other coaches. And these are the things that do bear discussion. They do.
Yeah, we've talked about it. He doesn't have a feel at times for the game. He doesn't he just can't read the fact that, this player's just coming back from injury. I'll tell you another moment, actually. In this, the Ravens lost today, and it doesn't matter, whatever. A lot of people may just poo-poo this. Justin Tucker today missed 3 kicks. Okay? Big reason why they lost that game. Yet, when he missed that 3rd kick, who came up to him on the sideline and told him it was going to be all right? And he's sticking with him.
John Harbaugh.
John Harbaugh did. Kyle, when Moody missed 3 kicks, had his head buried in a play sheet. I was there. I was watching it. Didn't even look his direction, so much so that Debo and them are getting in an altercation, and Kyle didn't even know about it. One time, man. One time. Be a coach. I remember this offseason when he was allowing other guys to call plays during the preseason. And somebody I think it was Mayoko, had asked him the question, hey, would this be something that interests you? Having an offensive play caller so that you can do head coach things? And he's like what? What is there to do? He's like, I got to call plays. What is there to do, man? There's so many things to do as a head coach.
Yep.
It's like it doesn't even exist to him. He's truly, in his mind, a head coach is the offensive play caller. That is the thing that he does. That's what he's responsible for on game day. And that's it. And he acts that way.
Well, and Jess, I told you, I remember you texted me, he said, hey, when are you going to say something nice about Jim Harbaugh, right? So I've always had and I'm not saying that jury's out. I'm not saying that Jim Harbaugh is obviously an excellent coach. I've been slow to, I've always been leery of the kind of snake oil, rah stuff. And hey, you can't argue with results, right? But Mike McCarthy has won a Super Bowl, but nobody argues that Mike McCarthy is a brilliant head coach, right? But all I'm going to say is the rah kind of I'm going to bite your kneecaps off, like Dan Campbell thing. That's stuff hey, that's great, but does that pay the bills? I tweeted out 3 weeks ago, twice on 2 occasions, said, look, I was wrong. I still don't necessarily think that Harbaugh and Dan Campbell are brilliant people, but I think they're genuine leaders. I think they genuinely care. So this is something that I saw at the Chiefs game that I was at, and I didn't tweet it out because I didn't think it was, I didn't want people to pile on. I didn't think that, when Brandon Ayuk got hurt, and maybe this has been discussed. I don't know I can't remember if this, but you just mentioned the playbook when Jake Moody, when Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL, Kyle's not on the field. Kyle's not checking on his player. Kyle immediately looks disgusted, like he always does. I mean, Kyle doesn't have any other emotion than just contempt. And and so in this moment, this guy signed this big contract. Obviously, there was consternation on either side. He has this big injury, and Kyle doesn't run on the field. Sean McVay, every time there's Sean McVay is right there. John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh. You could go on the line. I was watching college football. Matt Campbell for Iowa State. Always people joke, as senior day, he's crying his eyes out. I mean, it's college, right? But Matt Campbell had NFL. He loves these players. People can say, hey, these players respect him. Yeah, I think the Cabo Boys really respect him. I think they like him. I think they like that they have a standard for them and them only. And I think it's like a country club. I think they like to have fun. I think it's a bromance, right? But I don't know, like, if Kyle really shows that he genuinely cares about these players as people and as players on the field. And when I saw that, I was like, maybe I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill out of this. But when you mentioned that Jake Moody thing, and then also 2 weeks ago in Tampa, when Debo hand around the throat, immediately it was like, oh, Tabor overreacted. Nothing to see here. There's blocks in leadership to me. There's certain like levels of human depths of emotion where Dan Campbell, is going to like be that guy for their player. And I just don't see that with Kyle. And it honestly does bother me. And people can say whatever you want. People could say, well, you're just some guy on the couch. I don't care. If that doesn't bother you, that's fine. To me, there's another level of a head coach. You're not just play calling, like Jess said. You're an everyman for those people. You are a culture changer. You are a catalyst for, and I believe that Kyle's whole demeanor can be very toxic. And I think that Kyle, it shows in the way that he has no regard for the player's health. And it shows in the way that he just isn't there to build the players up.
Yeah, man. What's the saying? A zebra doesn't change its stripes. He was this way forever. He was this way when RG3 went down.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, this is who he's always been. And thinking he's going to change, I think, is crazy. You just got to decide whether you want to live with it or not. And I think it's easy to live with when you're winning, but the moment that they're losing and you start to see every little thing and you're like, God, well, yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that this moment he didn't have his head up, or this moment he wasn't putting his arm around a player, or this moment he could have put the fire out and decided not to. Like, all those things start to come back and you're like, man, this guy. Speaking of this guy and great decision making, Mason finally gets his chance. He runs them all the way down to inside the 5. And Kyle Juszczyk gets his 4th carry of the season and fumbles the ball, essentially ending the game. That was, if they had any chance of coming back, that was it right there. And you hand it off to Kyle Juszczyk for gosh knows what reason. And he fumbles. Game over right then and there.
Yep.
What the hell, Kyle?
We've seen this before. Kyle, it's almost like Kyle wants this idea of it wasn't even misdirection. It wasn't even, it's just, and I don't want to, I'm not going to speak in absolutes here. I just feel like it speaks to, though, Kyle's hubris. It speaks to Kyle's, like, it's not like this Juice hasn't scored a touchdown before, right? Like, clearly he could have scored. Like, clearly he could not have fumbled, right? And yes, you could say, hey, that fumble is, look, but it's indicative of, Kyle's even like feeding your hot hand, like, feed the guys who've got you there. Give this guy the opportunity. I can remember when Jordan Mason scored his first touchdown. I've never seen a guy more happy to score his first touchdown. The joy, give these guys what they're due, and put these guys in a position to do what they do. Kyle Juszczyk does not carry the ball very often. Kyle Juszczyk doesn't touch the ball anymore because Kyle Juszczyk is not the Kyle Juszczyk of 4 or 5 years ago. Kyle Juszczyk is again, he's not even that efficient at what he does as a blocker anymore. And this is the Cabo culture, though. And tonight, Kyle Juszczyk fumbled. George Kittle drop. Debo Samuel fumble. Brock Purdy fumble. Buffalo Bills, no turnovers. I don't know. 49ers tonight. George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey for the first part of the game, but then Jordan Mason, the most efficient runner in the NFL next to Derrick Henry, okay, and best after yards after contact. Okay, Juwan Jennings is an absolute dog. Who are the Bills' weapons? James Cook, much respect. Ray Davis, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dawson Knox. No Dalton Kincaid. No Keon Coleman. Stephon Diggs is gone. Matt Collins.
Walked in like Tarzan, barefooted before the game.
Bro walked in barefoot. Like the Arctic Steve Irwin over here. He came in like, and so when I tweeted out, hey, and I texted Marco and Jesse this, I would ask you because I was keying this up like a boomer, but I was like, hey, are both teams playing in the same stadium in the same conditions? And immediately I got responses. Oh, they're injured. So the Bills. But again, let's talk about the injuries. Jalen Johnson played well. Ben Barch, the run blocking was phenomenal. Ben Barch and Dominic Cooney were dominating. The offensive line wasn't the problem. So then what's the injury problem? Oh, Nick Bosa? Okay, fair enough, I guess. Did you see the Buffalo Bills get much pressure on Brock tonight?
Nobody was going to get pressure on those quarterbacks tonight.
No,
it was
not in the snow, right? So then all that said, then where would
like if there was a game you could do without Nick Bosa, tonight was the game because it wasn't going to matter. Yeah,
there's like no. So where were the injury? And I'm looking at this team and I'm thinking, guys. And by the way, lost in the shuffle, Brock Purdy, number 4 in MVP voting last year. Yeah, he's coming off the injury. He missed a game. Quarterbacks miss games. Did you ever get a feeling while watching Brock tonight, like, boy, I'm glad we had, he's going to put our team on the. No, you knew that even though Josh Allen wasn't getting the reps, that Josh Allen was going to come through in those situations, and he did every single time.
Yeah. Coach Pile Shenanigans says, Jesse said, overreaction calling for Kyle to be fired. I never said that. I definitely never said that. No, I said that I wouldn't fire him, and I gave my reasons. But listen, go follow my Twitter timeline. People hate me on there because they're like, oh my God, is everything Kyle's fault? And it's like, well, yeah, kind of it is. He's the head coach of the team. I don't know what to tell you. I think both things can be true. I just want to say real quick, I think both things can be true. I think Kyle Shanahan can be an absolute bum for some of the things that he does and says and his decision making. And also probably shouldn't be fired necessarily yet. So I don't know. I mean, that's just me. I don't think that it has to be one way or another. But anyways, go ahead.
My question is, when this is the same thing that happens with players. When you do well, you praise the play. What players do, but that could be but with coaches, it's amazing. When your team does well, coach of the year, Brian Dable, coach of the year, we won some games, right? When you do poorly, usually we criticize the coaches for in the 49ers fan base. If the team does poorly, it's Kyle didn't fumble it. Not Kyle's lack of discipline. But then when we talk about all these other little nuances of the kind of the parts of like the culture, like when does it come? Like, have you ever watched the locker room?
When is it, Kyle? When is it on Kyle? Yeah, that's the question. Yeah,
this is my question. And so I do think demeanor matters. I do think that part of that culture matters. Have you ever seen John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, Dan Campbell? The list goes on and on and on in post-game speech. Have you seen the authenticity? Like, and have you then watched Kyle? It's like he doesn't even want to be there. Even after a win, it's like, all right, guys, yep, that's what we do. That's what we do. Yeah, it's like there's no energy, there's no like affect, there's no enthusiasm. It's just, you can't tell me that that's not part of coaching, and you can't tell me that doesn't sometimes bleed over into these guys. Because like I feel like Kyle's a player's coach in that way, but that Kyle's like kind of one of the guys, but a small circle of the guys. And when those small circle of guys make mistakes, it seems like there's no consequences. And when Kyle makes a mistake, there's no consequences. And I think that type of culture is something that should come under the magnifying glass. And it is one of those things we also look at results. And you haven't. I mean, and so look, I'm not saying fire Kyle either. I'm one of the few. You can go on my TL, do a search, lifetime contract. I've said it multiple times. I think Kyle's that smart and good, and I think that with the right pieces, Kyle's come very close, and they probably should have had one by now or two. But I also don't think that he's untouchable. I just don't. I do not.
Yeah, I don't think he is either. Far from it, actually. Cryptic says, you can't coach effort, Jesse. This team looks like they don't want to compete. Can't fix these issues in one season. Jair Brown needs to go. Yeah, but you allow it, right? Again, to me, when you're the leader, when you're the one that hired the GM, everything is on you. So when you have players comfortable with coming out and talking trash multiple times over after they lose big games, that's on you. That's your culture. That's what you've allowed. When you have a team that is comfortable saying and players comfortable saying, "Oh, we're the best team in the league. We just unfortunate."
Yep.
That's on you. And guess what? He said the same thing. So we know where they're getting that rhetoric from. When the effort is poor, that's on you. Everything, it falls under your umbrella. Now, whether you want to say, hey, he can't hold on to the ball for these players, I get all of that. But ultimately, the results and everything under that umbrella falls under the leader. You can't be the leader and get all the praise and all the credit and all the great things that come with that. And then when everything's on fire, just like go out the back door whistling like, it wasn't me. I don't know. It was these guys' fault. He should have caught it. He should have. No, that's not the way it works, man. And as a leader, you should take accountability for everything. I used to, when I would hire people and they were struggling, I'll never forget this. I had someone come up to me and he was struggling really, really bad. He was about 6 months into the position. And he's like, hey, I'm going to get fired, huh? And I looked him in the eye and I said, you're not going to get fired, because if you fail, I hired you, I trained you, I taught you everything. It's a failure on me. So as long as you give me effort, I'm always going to coach you and you're going to be good. You're not going anywhere.
Yep.
That's the way I expect to see a leader be. Now, I get it. It's the NFL. These guys get paid big money. It doesn't mean that you have to hold up that end of the bargain when the season's over. I mean, hell, Harbaugh was a great example of this, man. Look at how much he built up Alex Smith. Oh, he's the best quarterback of all time and all that BS. And the moment he could go on and move to Kaepernick, he did.
Yep.
But it didn't matter, because when Alex was playing, he felt like he was the best quarterback in the world because Jim made him feel that way.
Yep. I just think that somebody said you can't coach effort, but I think that part of that is, and I hate to belabor this, but it does go back to the Tampa game. This fan base and this team feeds into every win, becomes like this manufactured PR. Like the 49ers are back. I think it was the Tampa game was the game right after the bye, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you were at that game. I watched that game. We didn't do a show that game. I watched that game and thought, what is everybody seeing that I'm not? I thought it was a clunker. And this idea like, hey, the Niners are back. I mean, I'm talking, there's highly respected people in the 49ers content. I mean, I'm not going to say like this. It's just this manufactured BS. That even that Brock didn't have a good game. He didn't. He made a couple nice throws. Those were awesome. But in the aggregate, the first half was really bad. The second half was good with some highlights, but like it was the way in which they played. And then the Debo thing, to me, that shows no leadership. The fact that you immediately shut that down, that you have, like you said, Fred Warner, amazing player, sitting there with his wife on the podcast. Yeah, we're just an amazing team that happens to be whatever the record was at the time. You know, Debo saying, yeah, we're the best team in football, but, you know, things don't bounce our way. A good coach says, guys, I love you. I want you to be able to do these things and have these other pursuits in your life. I love that you're having podcasts and connecting with fans. That's awesome. It's good for our team. It's good for our brand. It's good for you. And rein that in. You can talk about a lot of stuff. We don't need to puff out our chest about that, right? And I think that it also just kind of, it's Micah Parsons energy, right? And nobody would, and as 49ers fans, we could go and say, oh, look at Mike McCarthy. He can't run a tight ship. But if it's the 49ers, and now you're 5-7, and I think that does come on the coach, and I think that Dan Campbell, that John Harbaugh, Sean McVay, I think those guys do have those uncomfortable, courageous conversations with their players that they love, and say, guys, this ain't it. This is not who we stand for. We're not out there making excuses. But that's not what Kyle does. Kyle makes excuses. Kyle likes his players making excuses, and he likes condescending to the media and anybody that calls him out on it.
Dave says, Jess, how are you upset when you called it? Calling it and wanting it are two completely different things, man. Shady Luke says, the moment Debo said you guys were the best in the league, I knew things would get bad. You don't say that in the NFL, being labeled the best. It is earned and not given. I completely agree. He's an Eagles fan, by the way.
100%.
Sir Cash Money says, last night I saw 3 women walking down a dead-end road. I shouted to them, hey, you 3 women, there's nothing over there. And they flew away. And I'm like, oh, they were some birds. He always.
That was the most entertaining. Okay, so that was the best part of my night. I sat on I watched the game on the treadmill tonight. I spared my kids and my wife from that travesty, and I had my AirPods on. This was the best part of my night by far, other than being with Jess here. I mean, honestly, if you could have just played that and flashed that across the screen for 3 hours, would have been a more enjoyable evening.
Prabha says Brock is a good quarterback unless it's too hot, too cold, rainy, or snowing. Other than that, we're good. We're good.
Sure. I agree. I'm with you.
Ski Nation says, don't feel bad, Jess. The Bills did it to us too. Go Hawks. Yeah, man, they're legit. John Naylor says Jesse has strong, honest content on Brock. Hey, man, people don't want to hear it, though. People don't want to hear it. Slick Niner says, if the Browns fire their head coach, would Jim Schwartz be available and a good DC for the 49ers? Ours sucks. I would love to have Jim Schwartz, and I think Kyle would love to have Jim Schwartz as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kent says, is it bad? Yeah, but we were also in the Super Bowl last year, right? Losing our minds over a bad season with a lot of key injuries is short-sighted. No. This is where I completely disagree. Completely disagree. This is not the 2020 season. The 2020 season, you were still young and building. Like, you got the 2019 season was like a year or 2 ahead of schedule, which meant when the 2020 season came around, yes, it was devastating. They had a ton of injuries, but you knew you were going to be back because all these players were still presumably in their primes. And we saw those runs. This is much different, right? You've got Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be coming off of a major, major injury, 2 torn ligaments.
Yep.
Let's see how he comes back. You've got CMC, who presumably just tore his PCL after coming off of major injury and being 29 years old. Let's see how he looks. You've got Deebo Samuel, who has looked like a shell of himself. You've got Trent Williams, who misses games every single year. You've got Kittle, who's been great, but also aging.
Yep.
You've got an offensive line that clearly needs a center at the very, very, very least. And you don't have any depth across your defensive line. On top of the fact that you're about to pay your quarterback potentially $60 million, and you've got 30 free agents. This is not one down year. This is a glimpse into the future.
Yep.
I'm telling you, this is not a 1 year down year something. Oh, and by the way, I haven't even mentioned the landscape of the NFC. Where's Detroit going? Where's Philadelphia going? Seattle looks like they're only ascending. They just got their head coach in his first year, and he's might win the division in year 1. You've got the Cardinals, who are not a good team as far as players, but they have some pieces. They're building, they're young, and they've already started that rebuilding process. So they're already pointed towards true north. The 49ers have got to tear it down and build it up while trying to catch these teams that have got a year or 2 head start on them. This is not a 1 year thing. I hate to break it to people. This is not a 1 year thing.
And this is a simple allegory for people. It's just like, my anecdote is like, hey, it's 2018, best shape of my life, doing these intense workouts where I do 20-mile runs with 5.5-minute mile intervals for like 20 miles. And then the next year I tore my groin. I'm like, oh, last year look at who I was. Now this year I've tore my hamstring and I have a groin pull, and I had to cancel my ticket to the Boston Marathon because it's like injuries catch up. It's not the same person. It's like this you could literally have this comparison to anything. Like, this team is different now. It's not 2023. It's not 2022. People are hurt and they age and the cliff falls off and when that drop off comes, it's not gradual. It's not like you're rolling down a bunny hill. It's like you're on a triple black diamond and your skis fall off and you wrap yourself around a tree. Okay. Like, this is what the 49ers are. I don't think people realize, and people want to act like this is like we're talking about the sky is falling. Now, I had said before, hey, sky isn't falling. The sky is falling now. And I think that it's okay in a way, despite all the foibles of the way the roster's been constructed and the think that they're going to get the band back together. If the 49ers can just say, hey, you know what? We're 5-7. Let's shut this down. Let's be honest about who we are, who the context of who we're competing against. Yeah, there's 31 other teams in the NFL, and we're one of them. And we're one that's not going to get the Super Bowl this year. It's not going to happen. And if you're not going to win the Super Bowl, what is the point of not starting to smartly look forward about how do you get back there? How do you get back to even last year? And it sucks. It's so hard because the 49ers could have and should have won the Super Bowl last year. But you're right, Kent. That was last year, though. And the reality is the 49ers, as much as that stings, they gotta say, you know what? I'd like to get back there. But like Jess said, it might take a year or two of pain to successfully get to the position where you can be back there with fidelity. Because Brock, I said, Jess, I've said this, Jess, I firmly believe the 49ers could win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, 100%, on a rookie contract, making the 61st ranked contract for quarterbacks in the NFL. As soon as you pay him, that is over. It's over.
I agree. I agree with that. And injuries happen across the league. I bet you nobody in this chat or most people in this chat don't realize.
Nope.
So the 53-man roster that the Detroit Lions started with, they had 15 players. The depth of their front seven was 15 players, from defensive linemen to linebackers.
Yep.
11 of those 15 are out. They have one freaking loss this season. One loss. 11 of their 15 in their front seven gone.
And they have 11 wins.
Still are a one-loss team, and they have 11 wins. I'm sorry, man.
And is anybody talking about them as if they're not? And granted, there are some teams that are talking about the Eagles. Nobody, I can't stand Nick Sirianni. And guess what? The Eagles are still really good. Mm-hmm. Right? So, yeah, they're a team that's starting to kind of knock on the Lions' door. I'm not saying the Lions are unbeatable, but given that, nobody's still not thinking that they're not a Super Bowl favorite. That's amazing. So when you look at the 49ers attrition with injuries, it hasn't been otherworldly. I would argue the Lions have faced worse.
Dave says, Jesse, I didn't beg for Bo Nix 9 months ago.
Oh,
just kidding. Yeah. I got you. Braden Larson says, I'm not a big fan of what ifs, but if we can beat the Cards and the Bills beat the Rams next week, then I really like our playoff odds at that point. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the 49ers catching you. I'll tell you that right now. That shouldn't be your concern.
Yeah, nice one.
Nicholas, a big one this week. Nicholas says, wife bought me tickets, 3 rows from the 49ers bench on the field passes pre and post game. Flight from Long Island, New York, and I couldn't get into Buffalo. It was delayed. Seems like it was a blessing after all. Dude, that still sucks, man. I don't know that that's a blessing. That sucks. Dave says, Lyle fed CMC immediately. Too much. Not Lyle. Miguel says, Purdy and Jimmy have the same stats after 2 seasons and the same decline. We need to draft a new quarterback. I hope we don't pay Purdy. Fire the DC now. Hey, man, you said it, not me. Dave says, I called CMC getting overused and Mason being mad. That's what I'm saying, Dave. I think everybody thought that he was being overused and didn't understand why. And it's like, oh, shocker. In cold weather, he got injured after touching the ball 9 times of the first 12 plays. Crazy. GTC Real says, boy, we suck. Something awful. All right. Brother Bob says, okay. I'll just double pay for my late second hat. I'll find a way to get you one, Brother Bob. We had a bet before the season started on this game with Josh Allen and Purdy and who would have a better game. Didn't go so well for you, Brother Bob. Dave says Mason mad because Lyle quit on him ASAP. Yeah, I would be pissed if I was Mason. Brother Bob says GTC, sup, bro. Definitely kicking it. Extend Kyle Levy. There he goes. Mike drops with Monza says, how many fireable offenses has Kyle had? I have 4. Packle says Purdy not being able to handle elements is mind-boggling. Tang goal line carry was mind-boggling. Need to feature Kittle. Core of this team is cooked. I don't understand the Purdy thing. Everybody says he has small hands. He has the same size hands as Patrick Mahomes. His hands are bigger than Trey Lance's.
Yep.
Okay. Bigger than Trey Lance's, believe it or not.
Yep.
I don't understand why he struggles so much in the elements. I don't.
And can we talk about this just real quick? This is not going away. And by the way, the 49ers play outside. And we saw this happen in Green Bay. Like the 49ers right now, I've been to a game against the Colts in October where it was an atmospheric river. Like when the 49ers are going into the postseason, there is a high likelihood that you're going to be playing postseason games, end of season games that could be big time, with playoff implications in conditions that Brock Purdy just does not play well in at all. And to me, like how can that not factor in to what you're not? Granted, most of the year, great weather in Santa Clara, if not sometimes kind of hot or warm, right? Big deal. But when you're talking about December and January football, November football, and that has to play into what you're willing. If you're going into these situations or going on the road like you just did, about these things have to come to the equation. And if you know that you're going to go in, and Brock Purdy has never once had a game in college or in the pros in balls where there's like any type of wet conditions, he just does not play well. That's not going away. And how that is just like, well, nobody plays well, and that's not true.
That's not true at all. That is not true at all. Yeah, we've seen plenty of quarterbacks play very well in the elements, so it's crazy. I do have to say real quick, we've got almost 2,100 people watching between Twitter and YouTube. Thank you so much, first of all. Second of all, make sure you check out the sponsor of the channel, Underdog. Links in the description, promo code LSS. That'll get you your deposit match up to 1,050% of that and your one free pick. They've been the sponsor all season long. They're absolutely incredible, and they got you covered no matter what it is you want to do, whether it's fantasy, more or lesses, whatever it is. Underdog has got you covered. Thank you, Underdog, for being a great sponsor of the channel. Brother Bob says, Harris, sup, bro? Wow, I almost had swerving. Mike Drop says, Kyle does not respect his players. You can see it.
And I agree with you. I don't think Kyle, I do think you can see it. I think you can see it on his face. And I think that is something as a teacher, you said even in leadership and business, like I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, right? There's ways in which affect does matter. It does, and it can become toxic when you show no joy. He's consistently with his contempt, for anything that does it's Kyle's world, and I don't see that changing.
Matt says CMC PCL injury season over. Yeah, we talked about it, Matt. It's crazy, man. Crazy. George, what's up, George? It's been a while. It says, I haven't seen you guys in so long. How are you guys doing? Another crappy season. Fire Kyle. He's gonna keep feeling it. It's never gonna end, brother. It's been a while, man. Good to see you. Jayanth says profound points about leadership. Even Jonathan Gannon and McDonald are better leaders and culture setters. Yeah, I
100% agree. 100%.
There was a clip today. I was watching the Cardinals game, and they were talking about their defensive coordinator, and they asked Jonathan Gannon about him, and he's like, oh, dude, this guy is a way better defensive coach than I've ever been. Like, he's incredible. I'm so lucky to have him. Kyle would never about any of his offensive guys. He would that would never ever happen. He would never say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to have this guy. If I didn't have him." Now, he may not even mean that, but the fact that he's saying it, how much are you giving to that coach, man? Like, that coach will always have Gannon's back no matter what because of those types of comments.
100%.
I can go into leadership all day. Brother Bob says, David, drink your vino makes the butt beating okay. He's got his boxed wine. Dave says, Brother Bob, they are all beatings with Lyle as head coach. Oh my gosh. Dazza says, hopefully 49er fans saw tonight the difference between an elite quarterback and a fringe top 10 quarterback. Giving Brock Purdy $60 million will screw this team for years. Thank you, Dazza. That's all I've been saying. It's not. I've never once said Brock isn't good. No. I've never once said he's not borderline top 10. I just said there's a major difference between the elite franchise caliber quarterbacks and the non-elite franchise caliber quarterbacks. And I hope everybody saw it tonight.
It's the NFL too. It's not Major League Baseball. We're not the Los Angeles Dodgers, where you can put off $1 billion, literally $1 billion, and offloaded salary into perpetuity, right? Like, this is not the 1994 49ers where there was no salary cap. But this is, I think people forget about that. Like, this is, when we're talking about this is not about Brock Purdy, the person, or even like that he's trash, that he can't play in the NFL. Like, it's the idea that what you think about really rolling those dice, right? We're all going to Vegas. Like, you're taking chances. You've seen what he's put on paper. You've seen what he's put on the field. But now that you can have a price tag, the price tag wasn't there. You've been bargain shopping with him at quarterback, and you got that close. It's just different, and I think people need to separate the emotion from the financial reality and the way that which it has dominoes that affect your roster construction.
Games like tonight, games like the Ravens game, games like whatever bad game you want to throw out there that Brock has had, are okay when he's making $1 million. They are. In fact, you should expect them every once in a while, because my gosh, he's way outplayed what his contract is. But when he's making 50, 55, 60, 65, absolutely not. You can't go out there and do that. No way. Yeah. Dave Barclay says, yeah, what's up?
I was going to say, there's a great tweet that says, receiving touchdowns in 2024. Josh Allen, 1. Jared Goff, 1. Bo Nix, 1. Deebo Samuel, 1.
Oh my gosh, dude. Dave Barclay says Lyle is the biggest roadblock now and has been for the past 8 years. Jeez. All day, every day, Kim says, I've heard so many people say that they'd rather have Brock over any of these types of quarterbacks, including Josh Allen. Thank you. I'm not crazy. You're said not. This. These people need help from Helen Keller ASAP. Yes, I had people all offseason tell me I'm an idiot. Oh, you just like traits. Yeah, I like traits. It's the effing NFL. Yes, I like traits. They matter. They matter. Gosh, Brother Bob says, y'all crazy. Said last week, fire Kyle Levy. Now, why not?
Oh, Bob, that's just bad luck, though, Bob.
It was bad luck. Dave Barclay says, wrote a song. Kyle sucks. That's all I got so far. See, that was a good one, man. That was good. Brother Bob says, Dave, great song. Next line, always have and always will. Jeez,
man, you guys should go to a karaoke bar.
They really should. Matt McEwen says, 49ers need to find a quarterback. Brock ain't it. Ooh, oh, shoot. Dang it. Oh my gosh. I just completely screwed up and got rid of that super chat. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. It was the person with the Mad TV thing. Accidentally double clicked on it and got rid of it. Hold on. I got to go back. Here it is. Okay. Billy says, I agree with your views on leadership, Jesse, which is where my biggest issues come in with Kyle. When has he once accepted responsibility and been open to change. It's always excuses, no hope with him. And that's the other thing. There are things that happen behind closed doors that we'll never see. So I can't say for certain things are or are not happening behind closed doors, but based off of what he gives us and based off of how I've seen him mid-game or in practices interact with his team, I feel like I've got a very, very, very good look into who Kyle is as a leader, and there's so much that's left on the table with him, man.
Yep.
The coach says effort is coached, like tackling or finishing blocks. Kyle got credit when they swarmed to the ball for years. Now it's on the players. I'm not buying it. Effort is a habit built through preparation and demanded by coaches. Whew, coach is spitting. I bet you he went crazy during his live game call tonight.
Oh, man, by the way, Isaiah, my son says hi, and he misses you.
There we go. Dave says, just wondering what I said week 2. Eerie. Dave, you've called a lot of stuff this year. Shady Luke says, yeah, Jesse, you said, look at where the NFC is going. Green Bay. I didn't even mention Green Bay or the Vikings. That's the crazy part. Didn't even mention them or what Chicago might be if they actually had a competent coach. They have 3 of the most atrocious losses.
Yep.
Of all time this year. It's like if they just had a competent coach, man. Geez. Anyway, says, look at the NFC is going. Philly, Detroit are so young. San Francisco needs to hit on this upcoming draft and the one after. And they have to dump some of these contracts. There's a lot going into it. Cryptic says Kyle Shanahan's stats speak for themselves. Can't expect to front run wins.
Yep.
No special teams or hurry up coaching. Remember when Sirianni was wanted out week 4. Now look at them. And I don't think Sirianni is even a good coach. I'm just being real with you. I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's a merchant of his coaching staff. But at the same time, he's made good decisions on his coaching staff.
Yep.
And they are winning, and he deserves credit for that. Die Hard 49ers 101. Purdy is issue. Jennings does it. But no one else. I don't know. I don't know what you're saying, Die Hard. It basically what I'm saying is Purdy is not the issue of why they lose individual games a lot of the time. But Purdy is not the solution. So that is factual. Pacquiao comes back and says depth of the D has been a huge problem all year. Especially at D line. The talent drop off between the 1s and 2s is drastic. I agree. Anthony says, if we need to rebuild, why not fire Kyle now? Why let him start a rebuild? Harder to lure a different coach in 1 to 2 years if it's not working. This is kind of where my point is, Anthony, and hear me out for a second. And I want to get your opinion on this too.
Yep.
So if they were to fire Kyle, like let's say that they come to him after this season, they're like, listen, Kyle, you're on the hot seat. You don't win a playoff game next year, you're gone. And we both agree they're not going to win a playoff game. Let's just assume we both agree on that, whether that's true or not. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to for sure let him go at the end of next year. My thought process is, why not let him go down with the sinking ship? I don't think they're going to be able to, quote unquote, rebuild this offseason anyways.
Yep.
I think they're going to have to cut a lot of the fat this offseason. And yes, they're going to draft one more draft class. But after that, I mean, they're not going to be making a lot of long-term decisions other than cutting the fat. Let's see if he can make it happen. And if he can, he deserves to stay. And if not, he goes down with the sinking ship. Then the new coach can come in and decide, all right, this is the way it's going to be. I've got the salary cap stripped down. I can start and build this thing back up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is the catch-22, is that I think it's also the idea of Kyle stripping it down and selecting a quarterback is another one of those issues, because despite the yarn that was spun in Super Bowl Media Week by Jed and Kyle was not a guy that pounded the table for Brock Purdy. That is completely BS. It is 100% fabricated PR, just fluff. It was Brian Greasy that was in there and there were even Adam Peters, like throughout like the scouting department, there were other people that were saying, yeah, I think let's go for it. But again, it was 262. It was Mr. Irrelevant, right? Other than that, Kyle has picked, and I like Trey Lance coming up, but Kyle doesn't have a great track record of the guys that he likes. So that's another part of the idea. So to Jess's point is, if you do move on from Brock and Kyle is still here, does do the Yorks have trust that Kyle can make that decision? I don't know if they do, to be quite honest. And the problem is if you were to fire Kyle, and again, I'm not saying that you should, what options are you going to, how sure are we that this isn't a dumpster fire? Like, if you're firing Kyle, does that mean that you're saying we are bringing back Brock and we're going to try to lowball him? Are you making him play out on the 4th year? Because if I'm a head coach and I'm coming into a situation, I want to have, if I don't have full control like Kyle does, I still want to know, like, hey, what's my base? Can I have success? Do I see myself here? And if you're not all in on Brock, maybe that's part of who you hire, right? And so I don't know. I don't think it's that easy. And I think that's what Jess said. Like, as much as it might be hard to see, like, we know that Kyle is incredibly smart. We know that Kyle he can polish a turd pretty good. Like, let's be real. Let's talk about what Kyle does well. All right. Kyle can get Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl. Let's be real here. Kyle can get Nick Mullins on a graphic with Andrew Luck and Pat Mahomes and the first quarterback to do X. Right? This is who Kyle is. Like, Kyle's that good, right? But Kyle's also done that with having Christian McCaffrey, the best offensive player in the NFL. George Kittle, the Hall of Famer, best tight end in the NFL, right? Brandon Ayuk, who I think is the best route runner in the NFL, right? Like, all of these other different, like, you have all those weapons around you, then when you're having success. Kyle, like any other coach, when you have the dregs, you don't have success. But at quarterback, he can polish these, and I'm not calling Brock Purdy a turd, but like, Brock Purdy is also not your Josh Allen. Brock Purdy is not your top 5 quarterbacks, but he can make them be in the top 4 in MVP voting. Any fan base in the world cannot see that what Kyle brings. So I think the play is, you bring Kyle back, because I don't think you have any other choice. I don't know if this is going to be desirable. If you were to fire Kyle, what coach is going to come in and say, you fired Kyle Shanahan, this is the act I have to follow with this team, knowing full well that there's other coaches where Kyle would be hired right away. He would. Okay. Who's going to want to follow that act and then go into because this would be a dumpster fire. Because, by the way, the Cabo Boys will be mad. The Cabo Boys will be mad. And all of a sudden, this is just like, it just lays the foundation to collapse. So I think that you come hell or high water. I know this is what some of you want to hear or do. Maybe you do. Again, I like Kyle, but I've also told you what I don't like about Kyle. And maybe Jed brings him in and said, but we need to see growth. We believe in you. We believe in you. We've got to see some change. And we are willing to rip off the Band-Aid and these other things. But this culture's got to go. These players that dictate policy have got to go. And by the way, I know for a fact, I wish I didn't know this, there are players in that locker room that can walk into Kyle's office and say, I like this player. I don't like this player. This exists. You don't you think, well, how do you, just, if you don't want to trust me, don't. I get it. This culture has got to change. And what I'd like to see, George said, Kyle, we believe in you. We hired you for a reason. So go do your thing, but like, stop being married to these players. And let's do this.
I think you made a really, really important point there, that we have to understand how this looks to incoming coaches or potential incoming candidates.
Yep.
Firing Kyle, who's been to 4 NFC championships and 2 Super Bowls after a losing season and not back-to-back losing seasons, is not an act that other coaches are going to want to follow. They're just not, especially knowing that they've got to rebuild this thing from the ground up themselves. And maybe they don't want Brock Purdy as the quarterback. And Jed is like, you have to have Brock. Like, it has to be a part of the package. And it's like, no, I'm not. No, I don't want that. So you really have to play this well. I understand you may want to get rid of Kyle, But doing that now, I think you are falling into the chances of, which I hate when people say this, oh, you want another Chip Kelly or Tom Sula? Like, no, it doesn't have to be that bad, but you might end up with a really crappy coach if you do it this year because of that. Yeah, like your first, second, third, fourth choice might say, nope, I want no part of that. So I think you have to tear some of these contracts out, eat the money this offseason, see how he does, judge it after next year. And if he has 2 losing seasons, and you've got this roster stripped down and you got money to play with, now you can go get a guy and you can look more enticing to somebody, I believe.
Yep. And the bottom line is, as bloated as some of these contracts were with these extensions that I thought were absolutely ridiculous, kicking the can down the road, this is the pain that Jesse is talking about. The pain does not have to be exacerbated by paying a quarterback who's really a 12 to 15 quarterback number one money. Like, I'm not going to number one in the entire NFL. Okay. You choosing not to do that enables you to actually make that pain, that skin that comes off of the Band-Aid, heal a little bit quicker. And,
Yep.
and if you go in and you deep dive and you say this, and people say, oh, pay him $50 million. Guys, Daniel Jones made top of the market money. This isn't the way it's going to work. Okay. And so I'm hopeful. And I know this is coming to people are going to think, like, again, like I said, I watched the Iowa State game and then I watched the BYU Houston game until after midnight Central Time last night because I wanted to make sure Iowa State had qualified for. I almost went to the game, but we didn't want to freeze our asses off. Okay, I would love to see Brock succeed with his team so much I can't even tell you. I'm also realistic enough and nuanced enough as a fan to not be such a homer to think that this is actually the right call. And I think that what I don't know is how much the Yorks, and I do feel like the Yorks are like the idea of Brock winning, like the idea of Brock being the guy. They want to have the Steve Young. They want the Joe Montana. They want that. They want those portraits with the trophies at 49 Centennial. They want that. But it's the idea of it. And as Kent's comment said before, yeah, that was last year. And last year's like 10 years ago. That's the thing, Jesse. Do you think, I'm going to ask you that. Do you think this organization has the cojones to rip the Band-Aid off? Keep Kyle, and actually tell Kyle, because let's be real, you and I both know Kyle likes Brock a lot. Kyle respects Brock a lot. Kyle does not think Brock is the best thing since sliced bread.
No.
Brock is not Kyle's firstborn son, so to speak, in that type of way, right? Brock is not who Kyle picked, right? They kind of fell into him, given circumstances, right? To me, Kyle's been given the extension. Do you think that this organization has the cojones to go to Kyle and say, Kyle, we're sticking with you. We're giving you permission to give us one more go and change up quarterback?
No.
And I'm not saying rookie. I'm saying like, do you think they're saying like, we're gonna table it. We're gonna say, Brock, you might not like this. We believe in you, but we haven't seen enough. You don't even have to say that. Saying that you're unwilling to pay him, just like quibbling on that money, is enough to show Brock what you think of him. Okay. So my question is, do you think that the 49ers organization, the Yorks, because John Lynch is a figurehead, we know John Lynch doesn't. Okay. Do you think that the Yorks say, Kyle, you're our guy. Come hell or high water, we're going to strip this down. And we want you to be the architect, but other people are going to come in maybe. You maybe not have all, but like, we want you to be the guy on the sideline. We believe in you and what you can be and where you've brought us. But you can divest from Brock. Do you think they would do that, or do you think they believe more in Brock? And I asked this on Twitter. Remember that tweet?
I don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know, man. I don't know where they're headed because it's so hard for me to get out of my mind them saying that they're going to pay Brock. But I also do remember this. Go watch the first player that Jed York went up to after they lost the Super Bowl to embrace. It was Eric Armstead, who they cut just a few months later.
Yep.
Okay. So you're watching that and you're thinking, oh, there's no way that Eric, who just got a contract extension, by the way, the year prior, they kicked the can down the road and reworked his deal. This is the one player you're choosing to wait for on the sideline and talk to and shoot the ish with. That player was one that you were willing to let go just a few short months later. I would have never thought that. So you never know. You never know. I don't think they would, but man, I also would say you can't be that surprised. So I don't know.
After this game, and I agree, I know he's coming off an injury, and I know he's got shots in this. I get that. I get that. When the rubber hits the road, we've seen what happens to Brock when the things are not all aligned. We've seen it all year this year. The 5-7, and Brock's missed one game. Okay.
Yeah.
And just because Brock would have been there in Green Bay does not mean that they would have won that game.
That game last week was this week wasn't any better than last week.
No, it was worse
as far as the result, right?
Yep.
So Dave says I said 7-10. Do we even have 2 more wins?
No.
I don't know that we do. Mike drops with Monster says Brock struggles in the elements because of his release, has to compensate for the arm and hurts his placement and grip. Watch how he releases the ball. You will see it.
I believe you.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I'm listen, I'm not a mechanics expert. Poppy says Bosa is not an Aaron Donald. Trade him this offseason to help with the rebuilding. When's the last time you saw Bosa win the 49ers a big game? Never. I think,
well,
I'd have to go look. I thought Bosa, like last year, there was like 3 games in a row he closed out, or maybe it was the year before. I could be wrong.
I will say this, though, about Bosa. I mean, I'll be real with you on this. And Poppy, I respect your opinion, bro. Like, Nick Bosa is a freak. And what he does and the effort he brings and the attention he demands and commands is different. Like I've said, TJ Watt's an amazing player. TJ, like, I look at Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett more in that vein. I know people disagree with me on this. But TJ Watt kind of does their wide 9-ish kind of stuff like that. Like Nick Bosa, he's just different. And when he's off the field, it's this team suffers. And the problem is, though, is that there have been some that whenever he has to play, and I think you might have talked about this, Jess, whenever he has to play, he's not Max Crosby, Iron Man, where Max Crosby's playing every snap. And Max Crosby's never getting hurt. Nick Bosa gets hurt. And I don't even know if Nick Bosa's contract is tradable, to be quite honest.
If somebody wanted to give some first-round picks, I would trade Nick. I'm not saying I wouldn't trade Bosa, but
I said I'd do it last year. I said I would do 2 years ago. I said I would have done.
But remember when Lamar Jackson became available and we're like, hey, if you could trade Bosa and Purdy and a first rounder for Lamar, would you do it? And we were like, hell yeah, we do it. And everybody's like, you're an idiot, but you can't without Bosa. It's like, okay, well, all right.
I would have sent 2 more first.
It's like, dude. Mike drops a monster says Kyle has a grudge because he wasn't good enough to play. All right. Gen 3 Callie says Kyle doesn't respect himself.
Well, he might not. He's not. He hasn't met his dad's standard. That's another thing that people don't want to talk about. Kyle is living under the shadow of his dad, and his dad's shadow is huge.
Casts a big shadow, his dad does. Dazza says, how many fans would take Harbaugh over Kyle Shanahan now? I've always said I would take Harbaugh. Brother Bob says, screw it. Give Brock Purdy $75 million per. He deserves it.
Cheers, Bob.
Fair enough. Harris says, what would the convo around Kyle be if no Super Bowl last year?
Yeah, it almost didn't happen. It probably shouldn't have happened, to be quite honest. They got lucky. There was a lot of bounces of the ball, the Packers and Lions game. Honestly, let's be real. Like, we were there.
They were just as close to losing the Packers game as they were to winning the Super Bowl. Like, they were equally as close.
100%.
Gabriel says culture is rotten with this team. Starts with Jed. Kyle should not feel secure being in last place in the worst division in the league. Ooh.
And Brock's, yeah, I know.
Dazza says, can't call him Kyle Levy. Disservice to Marv. Wow, jeez, man. Gaming for God says, don't forget it came out. Kyle was begging to trade up for Allen in the 2018 draft. He looks like a sad puppy watching Allen. I'm sure. Listen, there's a reason that Lance was here. It's because he loved Josh Allen so much. They played him in 2020, and then you saw what happened. Don't be surprised if he gets a crop. His button is like, oh, man, I got to have me that. I'll risk it all right now. Dave Barclay says, what movie are we now? 2012? Armageddon? If we were a movie, Armageddon might be fitting. Brother Bob says, Dazza, I can't stop now. Sorry, Marv is cheeks too. Dazza says, Dave Barclay, Niners are the Titanic movie now. Ooh. Brother Bob says, pouring vino always sounds good, huh, Dave? Cheers. We heard it. Die Hard Niners says, Kyle is the issue. Debo is trash. Slow as hell, gimmick plays, crappy LT, example of choosing Bell over Cody Schrader. Who says Purdy wants 60? Okay, let's say he wants 50.
Can we talk about Debo tonight? Can we talk about Debo briefly?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So Debo, Dave Lombardi was getting us his tweets. The burst. Okay. Snow game, right? All these guys, and to be fair, the rushing numbers were inflated for both teams. And I did say the James Cook touchdown didn't have anything to do with the snow. It didn't really. It was just bad pursuit on Tig Brown. But it was clear that straight line running forward for the offensive player was much easier than these lateral movements for defenders. And then the defensive line was trying to anchor, and it just was hard, right?
Yeah.
Well, so Debo gets some kickoff returns. Again, nobody's ever argued that Debo, with a head of steam, can't run if he's blocked for. Okay. So, but when Debo had the ball tonight, 0 yards after the catch. Okay. 0. 4 catches for 20 yards, averaged 5 yards a catch. That was the lowest yards for a catch of any player on the team. Christian McCaffrey had 2 catches for 14 yards. Now he's a running back. He's catching balls out of the backfield. George Kittle tonight. 2 drops, 1 catch for 7 yards. Juwan Jennings, 3 catches for 56 yards, averaged 19 yards a catch. And Juwan Jennings had a dive for a couple of them too. Cabo boys, but I just want to tell you, this team needs a culture shift. And this is kind of that radical. I don't think we've ever really talked about this. And I asked you that question. I can get behind Kyle as much as I've critiqued some of the toxicity that I think is there with his personality. Sometimes I feel like the core of this team has too much clout and pull, and then combined with Kyle, it becomes something that's almost like an energy that's impossible to overcome. I feel like you can only know what Kyle can do if you give him the opportunity to kind of get away from these guys that pull some of those strings and some of those players that have some, and the buddies that they, and this, because this ain't it.
No, this is not it. Dave says Lyle is dog water. Even Zoolander turned left at the end. Billy says a good draft pick is silver lining because we are so good at picking in the first. Get real on that one, fellows. Hope I'm wrong, but 8 of the last 10 picks say otherwise. And Bosa just was so obvious, right?
That was Jimmy G.
Obvious.
Yeah. Jimmy G LC, ACL. Yeah.
Billy says, appreciate the fair and common sense analysis. We appreciate you, Billy. Thank you so much. Brother Bob says, so just pay the new coach $16 million guaranteed. That's what you're going to have to pay. And that's the other thing is Jed willing to walk away paying Kyle another, I don't know, 40 something million dollars to not be here. I don't know. Spider says Zach Wilson would be elite on this roster. I'll tell you what, if Mac Jones had been drafted, Niner fans would have loved Mac Jones with this team. I'll tell you what, he'd have been a baller. Dave says Tom Sula and Chip Kelly have as many rings as Lyle. All right. Brother Bob says, Dave, you took my line. 0 Super Bowl rings is still 0 rings. Dave says, I did, Brother Bob. Ran out of room to credit you. All right, fair enough. Brother Bob says, Dave, can you have credit? They're going back and forth. But not my vino. They're just going back and forth with this. This is funny. Tommy Childs is a new member. Appreciate you, Tommy. Thank you so much. Spider says they mentioned Brady earlier in the season over Brock. Brady was last offseason. They were willing to bring in Brady and play him. You got to wonder if Kirk and Aaron Rodgers do become available this offseason, what Kyle might do. He's crazy as a fox, man.
Hey, Jess, can I? Ryan Hensley just tweeted out Brock had a negative 12.6 CPOE tonight, which is almost impossible. 5 out of his 11 completions were behind the line of scrimmage. One of them was 12 yards, and everything else was within 9. 11 for 18 for 94 yards. No plays with his legs. None. Josh Allen
and he tried to throw a couple picks. He did throw a pick, and it was called back due to the most bogus play ever. That was not at all.
George Kittle tripped over his own feet and ran into the defender, Damar Hamlin, and they called it illegal contact, and it was just George Kittle doing a WWE move that he didn't sell correctly.
Gold-blooded says Kyle slick back hair at the presser looking like Sham from Three Stooges. And Max says, why is Debo so bad in your opinion? Is he too fat or is he just a gadget player that got exposed? I think I think a few things. I think Coach talked about this. I've heard Ryan talk about this, and I agree with both of them. I think he's aging like a running back because that's the style of player that he is. And he's, now 28, almost 29. And I think that he is gadgety. And if he's not able to get ahead of steam and break a couple tackles, this is what he is. He's never been a good route runner. He's never been a great receiver out in the open. He's just been a great break tackles and do crazy things with the ball in his hands. But once you lose that a little bit, that's it. So he's just a little too one-dimensional.
Well, here's why he's exposed too. He's a legend in his own mind. And Debo is a 49ers. I will still say Debo is an all-time 49er. I've said this for multiple shows in a row with you guys with the post games. Debo does not think he has to improve. Debo almost got traded to the Jets because they were concerned that he would be content with being a one-time All-Pro. Debo's immaturity issues have not improved since his rookie year. This is just who Debo is. And so Debo believes, as he's told his podcast followers, his viewership, the best team in the NFL. And he said last week, show me where I haven't. When I've been given the opportunities, I've showed out. 4 catches for 20 yards. I think last week it was 1, 2 drops, 1 catch last week on like 5 targets. What are we talking about? And so this is the thing though, man, like if you can speak it into existence, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be real. This is the culture. And this is where, like you say, why is he so bad? Debo's an all-time 49er, and he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He doesn't think he's fallen off. Kyle won't say it. Nobody will say it. It's just the proof's in the pudding, though. We can see it, and they'll start telling you what you see is not real. And this is the Niners, though, man.
Good to see you in here, Josh. Listen, this is the same guy that was asked when he was playing really well about which wide receivers he watches and tries to take things from, and he says, "I don't watch them." And the way he said it was almost like they should be watching me. Are you what? I don't watch these guys. They're not on my level. That's the way he said it. He's like, I don't watch them. They're not the same as me. We do different things. Like, okay, chill out, man. You can't take anything from Devontae Adams' game. Come on, man.
It's ridiculous.
Dazza says 13 TDs and 8 interceptions in 11 games is not a $60 million quarterback. Let's not forget the fumbles.
Hey, let's not forget the 4 touchdown runs inside the 5-yard line. Like, look, there's other quarterbacks that do that too. So add 4 to that and then add the fumbles. It's 17 and like 10. Yeah, it's
It's like 17 and 14 or something like
yeah,
that.
it's crazy. It's bad.
Or 17 and what does he have? 8 interceptions? It's like 17 and 11. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Through
Awesome, man.
11 games.
Yeah. Spider says any QB that you like in the draft, Drew Alar is cool. I know that you like Alar. I haven't started watching any of the quarterbacks, so I'm not even gonna comment on any of them. I haven't watched any of them like that, so
yeah,
I'm not the guy to ask right now.
Me and Marco both independently, and Marco and Jesse and I are always talking ball and talking draft. Marco and I both independently really like Drew Aller. He's I think that he's a mix of a Justin Herbert, a Drake May, a Josh Allen. I think he's a lot more like the Drake May, Justin Herbert. And I think he has the traits plus athleticism, good decision making, NFL throws all over the field. And the nice thing about for fans watching this is that you're going to be able to see him in the playoffs. You're going to see him in the Big Ten championship next week. So maybe give him a look. He doesn't get.
I'll be watching him against my Oregon Ducks for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I want to see him. I remember that's how the 49ers were, or not the 49ers, the Ducks were going to play Brock Purdy in a bowl game in Iowa State back in 2020. And I was watching him leading up to that game. It's like, man, I really like this kid a lot. And that's what ultimately the fact that the Oregon Ducks played him and I saw him up close and personal on top of watching him before that a little bit. That's what made me really like Brock in college. And so maybe Drew Aller's a guy that I'll watch because of it and end up liking a lot as well. We'll see.
Yep.
Darnold is out playing Brock Purdy. That is a fact, a sad fact, because I don't think Sam Darnold's that good. I'm sorry. I still don't. He's still, every game you watch, he tries to turn it over like 3 or 4 times. He does. So I do want to say this real quick. Let's talk about it. Division outlook is there any chance here? Like what? I don't know if you've like dissected this thing, but it's rough. It's rough, man.
Yeah, I mean, right now, so the Niners are 5-7. Okay, that's last place for those keeping score at home. The Rams, so the Cardinals losing to the Vikings, and the Cardinals had it, and so that was big for the Niners. The Cardinals losing that game because they had the lead most of the game. And then they went down 23-22, and Kyler could not get them into field goal range, even in 4-down territory. So you got the Seahawks at 7-5, you got the Cardinals and the Rams at 6-6, you got the Niners at 5-7. The divisional record is the problem. The Niners are the only team with 3 losses. Actually, the Niners are the only team with a losing record in the division. Okay, every other team has 2 wins, but no more than that. The problem is the conference. Right now, the 49ers are 3-5 in conference. Now, the Rams and the Cardinals have 5 losses in conference as well, but they also have head-to-head matchups with the Niners where they have tiebreakers and they have better divisional records. This is where it's going to be problematic. If we're going to look at some of these schedules going forward, that Week 18 matchup against the Cardinals might not even it's not going to matter. But if you look at the Cardinals schedule right now, okay, they are 6-6. They just lost a heartbreaker to the Vikings in Minnesota. They got a big game at home next week against who? The Seahawks. Okay, so that's where the parity comes from, right? Well, right now, you're probably, as a 49ers fan, want to cheer for the Cardinals. Because if the Seahawks win that game, the Seahawks go to 8-5, right? Now, all of a sudden, the Seahawks are going to be 3-2 in division and 4-4 in conference and have a 8-5. They already have a 2-game lead on the Niners. So even if the Niners beat the Bears next week, they maintain that 2-game lead and they split with the Niners. So right now, you want as much parity as possible. The problem is the Seahawks, they play the Cardinals, but then they go and they host the Packers. And then they host the Vikings. And those are home games. And then they go to the Bears. And then they go to the Rams. And a lot of these teams, you're hoping, we talked about this last week, Jess, you were hoping that these teams would all just kind of fall apart around you. Well, it doesn't matter when you're falling apart yourself. So it's going to be really, really, really tough. And if you look at the Rams schedule, the Rams have to go home Next week, they host the Bills. They go on a short weekend to Santa Clara. Then they go across the country to go to New York and play the Jets, who are probably going to be on fumes anyway. Maybe Rodgers will be like doing an ayahuasca conference in the dark. Then you come back home and play the Cardinals, and then you go to the divisional. So they have 3 divisional games in the next 5. And then they also have the Bills and the Jets. So, yeah, there's some things that could go right for the Niners. The Niners have to stack wins too. You get the Bears coming up.
Then who just fired their coach, so they're going to be gung-ho. We've seen this happen before with teams.
And the Bears have given the Vikings, took the Vikings to overtime, took the Lions. Caleb Williams played in their house on Thanksgiving. If not for Matt Eberflus, I'm not saying they would have won it, but they just needed to get into. I mean, they could have forced the Lions into overtime if Eberflus isn't a complete idiot, right?
Yeah. Packers blocked field goal at the end of the game.
Right. So like, there's a lot of things that go on there. This Bears game isn't going to be easy. Then the Rams, they've got a lot to play for. This Rams team is trying to either win the division or even get in as a wild card outside of the division. And then you got to go to Miami, across the country, and then you come back to play Detroit. That's your consolation prize. And then you got to go to Arizona week 18. Look, the bottom line is, CMC's out. Okay, Nick Bosa's not coming back. Trent Williams isn't coming back. These guys are going to get shut down. Mark my words. Okay. The question is, and I think the Kyle's going to keep trotting out Brock Purdy, who's not there, who's not fully healthy. He's not. Deommodore Lenoir, is he coming back? I don't know. Dre Greenlaw, is he coming back?
I think Dre's going to want to come back because he's a free agent at the end of the year. I think he's going to want to put something on.
I agree.
On film. So
the bottom line is this division outlook is, it'd be one thing if there's like one team, all 3 of the teams above them, none of them are cupcakes. None of them are incapable of winning this division. All of them are in it, and all of them want to be in it. The 49ers are this is the sad thing, the state of the franchise, is that the Niners are clearly not in the class of this division.
The thing is that I think Seattle has they have Arizona, the Rams, the Packers, and the Vikings left. And I don't know who their 5th game is, but I'll say this. If they win one of those 2 division games, and if they win at least one of the 2 division games, and either the 2nd division game or one of the games against the Vikings or Packers, they own the tiebreaker against the 49ers because they have conference record. So that's it. Like, even if you end up with the same, even if you can close the 2-game gap on them, they would still own all the tiebreakers if they win just 2 of those 4 games.
I'm going to tell you, right?
That's all they need. And you would have to win both your division games on top of that. Like, it's just not, happening.
I'm going to tell you right now, the Seahawks right now, their biggest game is, even if they lose to the Cardinals next week, they go 7-6. That would put the Cardinals at 7-6. But then they have back-to-back home games against the Packers and the Vikings. And to be quite honest, I haven't looked at what the odds are. You can't tell me that the way the Seahawks defense has been playing lately and the way they're, you can't tell me that on paper. I look at those games. I think the Seahawks should be at least pick them on those games. And if they win, if the Seahawks rattle off 3 wins in a row, I think that's the crux. If they beat the Cardinals, even if they don't, let's say they go 7-6. If they get to 9-6, if they win 2 out of the next 3 games, it's over. Yeah, because the 49ers aren't around the table.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to beat the Bears.
I don't know if they're going to win another game.
Brother Bob says, you guys think that Kyle Levy was an issue in tonight's 100%. Yeah, I think we talked all about it. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Spider says, Aller would fit Kyle like a ring. Okay. I'll have to check him out. Dazza says, if the Niners win the division, we'd get bounced around one of the play. Yeah, it's over. It's over. It's freaking done. It's over.
They're not winning the division.
Yeah. It's over. It's over. This show is over for the night. We appreciate all of you for tapping in. David, thank you so much for joining me. It's 1 a.m. my time. It's midnight your time. We both got to be up around 6 a.m. our time for school and getting the kids and all that stuff together. So thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, much love. Talk to you tomorrow. Peace.